The sun was only half awake when Amir pushed his small wooden boat into the open sea. The salty wind brushed against his face, and the waves rocked gently as if to remind him that today would be the same as yesterday, hard and uncertain. Amir was a fisherman, and not a very lucky one. His boat was old, his nets had holes, and his pockets were always empty. Yet every morning, he rowed out with hope in his heart, praying the sea would be kind enough to give him something to sell at the market. Amir's life had never been easy. He lived in a tiny hut made of wood and dried palm leaves near the shore. His parents had passed away years ago, leaving him with nothing but the boat his father once used. Sometimes, when he sat alone at night, he would run his hands over the boat's rough wooden sides and whisper, "Don't give up on me." That boat was not just wood and rope, it was his only friend, his only tool to survive. The villagers often spoke about Amir with pity. Some said, "That poor boy works too hard for nothing." Others shook their heads, whispering that maybe he was cursed with bad luck. But Amir never complained. He believed that one day the sea would reward his patience. Until then, he would keep rowing, keep casting his nets, and keep fighting his hunger. On this particular morning, the sky was clear but the air was heavy. Amir could feel something unusual in the wind. He pushed his worries aside and threw his nets into the water, humming a soft tune his mother used to sing. Hours passed, and the net came back almost empty. A few small fish flopped weakly, but it was far from enough. His stomach growled, but he smiled sadly and said, "Tomorrow will be better." As the sun climbed higher, Amir's thoughts wandered. He remembered how, as a child, he used to dream of sailing to faraway lands. He imagined himself on a big ship with strong sails, exploring the world and never worrying about food or money. But dreams were different from reality. Reality was a leaky boat, torn nets, and a half-empty basket. Still, Amir carried those dreams in his heart, because even a poor man had the right to hope. By afternoon, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. The calm sea started to shift, the waves rising higher than before. Amir knew storms well. He had been caught in many, and each time he prayed he would live to see the next sun rise. Quickly, he pulled his nets back and tied them down, preparing for the rough ride home. The first drops of rain hit his face, sharp and cold. The storm came fast. Thunder roared, and lightning cracked across the sky like angry fire. Amir gripped the wooden oar with both hands, fighting the wild waves. His boat jumped and shook as if it would break at any moment. The wind screamed in his ears, but beneath all that noise, Amir thought he heard something else, a faint cry. He froze. For a second, he wondered if his mind was playing tricks on him. But then it came again, louder this time, a desperate voice carried by the wind. Amir's heart pounded. He turned his head, squinting through the heavy rain, and his eyes widened. Far away, through the stormy blur, he saw the outline of a large white yacht. It was tilted dangerously, one side sinking into the sea. Amir's breath caught in his throat. He had never seen such a boat up close. It was huge compared to his own, a floating palace on water. But now, it looked broken and helpless, swallowed by angry waves. The cry came again, sharp and filled with fear. Someone was trapped. Someone was calling for help. For a moment, Amir hesitated. His boat was weak, the storm was fierce, and he was only one man. To go near that sinking yacht could mean death. He could turn back, row toward the safety of the shore, and pretend he never heard anything. But deep inside, Amir knew he could not. His heart was too soft to leave someone behind. He tightened his grip on the oar. "Hold on, whoever you are," he whispered against the wind. "I'm coming." With every ounce of strength, Amir forced his boat toward the sinking yacht. The waves fought him, tossing his boat like a toy, but he pushed harder, his arms burning, his chest heaving. The cries grew clearer now. Someone was still alive, still waiting. And Amir knew, in that stormy moment, that his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. The storm showed no mercy. Waves rose like mountains, crashing against Amir's tiny boat, drenching him from head to toe. The wind howled, pulling at his oar, trying to rip it from his hands. But Amir did not stop. His eyes stayed fixed on the sinking yacht ahead, where the faint cries for help grew weaker with each passing second. "Just a little more," he muttered, forcing his aching arms to keep rowing. His boat groaned, creaking as the water slapped against its sides. He had never been so close to death, yet never more determined to keep going. As he neared the yacht, Amir's heart raced. The once beautiful vessel now looked like a broken shell. One side was almost underwater, and the deck tilted dangerously. Pieces of wood and luggage floated nearby, carried away by the raging sea. He searched desperately for the voice, and then he saw her. A young girl clung to the railing of the yacht, her knuckles white, her face pale with terror. Her long dark hair was plastered against her face, and her clothes once fine and clean were now torn and soaked. She screamed again as a wave crashed over her, almost pulling her into the sea. "Hold on!" Amir shouted, though he doubted she could hear him over the storm. Still, he rowed harder, guiding his fragile boat as close as he could to the sinking giant. The girl's eyes widened when she spotted him. For a moment, disbelief crossed her face. A poor fisherman, in a small wooden boat, coming to rescue her? But she had no choice. He was her only hope. The yacht gave a loud groan, metal scraping as it tilted further. Amir knew there was no time. "Jump!" he shouted with all the strength in his lungs. "Jump to me!" The girl shook her head, fear freezing her. The sea between them was wild, waves crashing like angry beasts. She held the railing tighter, trembling. Amir's heart pounded. He knew she might not survive another minute on that sinking yacht. Gathering his courage, he steered his boat closer, almost under the yacht's side. The waves threatened to smash his boat against the larger vessel, but Amir did not care. He reached out his hand. "Trust me," he cried. His voice carried a strength he didn't know he had. The girl's eyes locked on his hand. Another wave hit, and she let out a cry. At that moment, she made her choice. With trembling arms, she pushed herself away from the railing and leapt into the stormy sea. Amir's chest tightened as he saw her fall. For a second, she disappeared under the dark water. Then, he threw himself forward, plunging his arm deep into the cold waves. His fingers brushed against her sleeve, and he grabbed tightly before the sea could claim her. "Got you," he gasped, pulling with all his might. The boat rocked dangerously, water splashing over the sides, but Amir held on. Inch by inch, he dragged her up until finally, she tumbled into his boat, coughing and shivering. The girl collapsed on the wooden floor, breathing hard, water dripping from her hair and clothes. Amir fell back, his own chest heaving. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm roared around them, but inside that small boat, there was only the sound of two hearts beating fast. "You're safe now," Amir said, his voice soft but firm. The girl lifted her head weakly, her wide brown eyes staring at him with shock and gratitude. She tried to speak, but her lips trembled too much to form words. Amir quickly took off his thin jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, even though it left him cold. "Stay low," he told her. "The storm isn't done yet." With the girl now in his care, Amir turned the boat around, aiming for the distant shore. The waves fought him at every turn, pushing him back, but he refused to give up. He thought of his father's words: "A fisherman does not fear the sea, he respects it." Amir whispered those words like a prayer, guiding his boat through the madness. The girl clutched the jacket tightly, her teeth chattering. She kept glancing at Amir, her mind struggling to understand why a poor fisherman would risk his life for a stranger. She wanted to ask his name, but her voice was too weak. For now, she simply trusted him. Hours seemed to stretch as Amir battled the storm. His arms burned, his body shook, but the thought of the girl kept him strong. At last, the rain began to soften, and the clouds slowly broke apart. The angry sea calmed little by little, and in the distance, the dark outline of the shore appeared. Amir let out a breath of relief. The hardest part was over, but the journey was not yet done. He looked at the girl beside him. She had her eyes closed, exhausted but alive. He promised himself silently, "I will get her to safety. Whatever it takes." As the boat crept closer to land, the broken yacht behind them finally disappeared beneath the waves, swallowed whole by the sea. The storm had taken much, but it had also brought two lives together: one poor fisherman and one mysterious girl, whose story was only beginning to unfold. The storm had finally passed, leaving the sky painted with soft shades of orange and gray. Amir's small boat reached the shore, scraping against the wet sand. His arms trembled from exhaustion, but his heart eased when he saw the land. The girl beside him stirred weakly, her body still shivering from the cold. "Hold on," Amir whispered as he dragged the boat further onto the beach. Then he bent down and carefully lifted the girl in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but her body was limp with weariness. Her wet hair stuck to his chest, and her breathing came in slow, uneven gasps. The village was quiet. Most people had taken shelter during the storm, so no one saw Amir carrying the strange girl. Step by step, he made his way to his small hut, which stood close to the shore. It wasn't much: just 4 walls of wood, a roof of palm leaves, and a single bed made of straw. But it was the only shelter he could offer. Inside, Amir laid her gently on the bed. He quickly grabbed a small blanket, the only one he owned, and covered her trembling frame. Then he lit a small oil lamp, its glow filling the dark room with a soft light. The girl's lips moved slightly, but no words came out. Amir sat beside her, unsure what to do. He wasn't a doctor, nor did he have medicines. All he had was kindness. He walked to the small clay pot in the corner, filled with rainwater, and poured some into a wooden cup. "Drink this," he said softly, holding it to her lips. She opened her eyes for a brief moment, her gaze tired but grateful. With effort, she sipped the water, and Amir saw color slowly return to her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice faint like a breeze. Amir smiled. "You don't need to thank me. Rest. You're safe now." The girl's eyes fluttered shut again, and soon she drifted into sleep. Amir watched her quietly, his thoughts heavy. Who was she? How did she end up on that sinking yacht? Her clothes, though torn, were made of fine fabric he had never seen in the market. Her hands, soft and delicate, did not look like the hands of someone who worked for a living. She was clearly not from his world. Still, none of that mattered right now. She was a life he had saved, and that was enough. Amir sat by the window, listening to the sound of the calm sea. His body was aching, his stomach empty, but he felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. There was someone under his roof, someone who needed him. Night fell, and the little hut grew colder. Amir didn't dare take the blanket for himself. Instead, he sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, watching over her like a silent guard. His eyelids grew heavy, and before he knew it, he drifted into a restless sleep. By morning, the sound of soft movement woke him. Amir rubbed his eyes and saw the girl sitting up weakly on the bed. The blanket was still wrapped around her shoulders, and her hair, though messy, framed her face gently. She looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "You saved me," she said slowly, her voice still fragile. Amir nodded. "The sea would have taken you if I hadn't heard you." She lowered her eyes, her hands twisting the edge of the blanket. "I thought I was going to die. Everything happened so fast. One moment, the yacht was steady, and the next, the storm swallowed it." Amir listened quietly, his gaze steady. "You were lucky," he said. "The sea is not always forgiving." She looked at him again, as if trying to read his face. "Why did you risk your life? You didn't even know me." Amir shrugged, though his heart was firm. "A life is a life. Poor or rich, stranger or friend, it doesn't matter. If someone cries for help, I cannot turn away." The girl's eyes softened, and for a moment, silence filled the room. Then she asked, "What is your name?" "Amir," he replied simply. "And yours?" "Lena," she said, her voice steadier this time. Amir repeated it quietly. "Lena." The name felt gentle on his tongue. She offered a small smile, though her eyes carried sadness. "I don't know how to thank you, Amir. You didn't just save me from the sea, you gave me a place to breathe again." Amir shook his head. "I only did what anyone should do. Rest now. You need strength." But as he said those words, a strange thought stirred in his heart. Not everyone would have done what he did. Many might have turned back, fearing for their own lives. Amir realized that perhaps fate had guided him into that storm, not just to catch fish, but to find Lena. Outside, the sun rose higher, casting golden light over the village. Inside the small hut, two very different lives had crossed paths, one of poverty, one of hidden wealth. Neither knew what the coming days would bring, but both could feel that this meeting was not a simple accident. It was the beginning of something larger, something the sea itself had delivered. The morning sun streamed softly into the hut, casting warm light across the wooden floor. Lena sat quietly on the bed, still wrapped in Amir's old blanket. Her eyes wandered around the small room. It was simple to the point of emptiness: one bed, a clay pot for water, a fishing net hung neatly on the wall, and a few wooden bowls stacked in the corner. There was no sign of wealth, no decoration, no comfort beyond the basics. For Lena, who had grown up in luxury, the sight was almost unbelievable. Yet, instead of pity, she felt a strange calmness here. The little hut had something her grand home never had: peace. Amir entered, carrying a bowl of steaming broth he had managed to prepare from the few fish he caught before the storm. He placed it gently in front of her. "Eat," he said softly. "It isn't much, but it will give you strength." Lena looked at the bowl, then at him. "You made this for me?" Amir gave a small shrug. "You need food more than I do. I can wait." Her chest tightened at his words. She could see the hunger in his tired eyes, the thinness of his arms, yet he was willing to give her the little he had. With trembling hands, she lifted the bowl and sipped slowly. It was simple, salty, and warm. Tears pricked her eyes not because of the taste, but because of the kindness. "Thank you, Amir," she whispered. He nodded, saying nothing more. As the hours passed, Lena grew stronger. She managed to stand and walk around the hut, though her legs still shook. Amir watched her carefully, ready to help if she stumbled. She noticed the way he moved, quiet, humble, always putting her comfort above his own. He offered no grand words, only small actions of care. That evening, as the sky turned pink and the waves calmed, Lena sat outside the hut, wrapped in the blanket. Amir sat a short distance away, mending his torn fishing net. The silence between them was not heavy, it was gentle, as if both had found safety in each other's presence. Finally, Lena spoke. "Amir, you don't ask me anything." He glanced up, his hands still working on the net. "What do you mean?" "You don't ask who I am, where I came from, or why I was on that yacht," she said softly. "Most people would be curious." Amir smiled faintly, his eyes on the setting sun. "If you want to tell me, you will. If not, it doesn't matter. To me, you're just someone who needed saving." His words left her speechless. She had met many people in her life, but no one who spoke with such simple honesty. After a pause, she whispered, "My name is Lena, like I told you. I come from a family that has more than enough. Too much, maybe. That yacht you saw, it belonged to my father." Amir's hands stilled on the net. He looked at her for the first time with surprise, though he quickly hid it. He had guessed she was not from his world, but hearing it confirmed was different. Still, he said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "My father is a businessman," Lena said, her eyes clouding with memories. "He owns ships, lands, houses, everything people dream of. But none of it kept me safe in that storm. All the money in the world could not save me when the sea decided to take me. Only you could." Her voice shook, and she turned away, blinking back tears. Amir set the net aside and spoke gently. "The sea does not care who is rich or poor. To the sea, we are all the same. That is why we must help each other." Lena looked at him again, and in his eyes, she saw no greed, no hunger for her wealth. Only kindness. That realization touched her heart more deeply than she expected. The days that followed built a rhythm. Amir rose early to fish, though he often returned with little. He always shared whatever he caught with Lena, even if it meant going hungry himself. Lena, though unskilled in village life, tried to help fetching water from the pot, folding the blanket neatly, or clearing the bowls after meals. Each small effort made Amir smile, though he never said much. At night, they talked in low voices. Lena told him small pieces of her life, her childhood filled with tutors and guards, her loneliness in a house too large to feel like home. Amir listened quietly, never interrupting, only nodding or offering a thoughtful word. When she asked about his life, he answered with simple honesty. He told her of his parents, his endless struggle with the sea, and his dream of one day owning a stronger boat. Through these quiet exchanges, an unspoken bond began to grow. It was not the bond of wealth or power, but of two hearts that had faced fear together. One evening, as Lena watched Amir return from the sea with tired arms and only a few fish, she felt a deep ache in her chest. She had lived a life of plenty, Yet here was a man who gave more than he had, without expecting anything in return. Lena knew then that her life had changed the moment he pulled her from the sea. And though Amir did not realize it yet, his life was about to change too. Days passed quietly in the small hut by the shore. Lena's strength returned, and her cheeks gained color again. Though she was used to luxury, she began to find comfort in the simple life Amir shared with her. The mornings were filled with the sound of waves, the smell of the sea, and the sight of Amir rowing out with his old nets. At first, she felt awkward doing nothing, but soon she started helping in little ways, collecting driftwood for fire, drying the nets, and even learning how to clean the fish. Amir never treated her like a guest of honor. He treated her as if she belonged there, as if she were simply another soul living by the sea. Lena liked that. It made her feel real, not like the delicate daughter everyone always protected. But one evening, as they sat by the fire eating their simple meal, Lena finally opened her heart more fully. She looked at Amir, her eyes serious. "You saved me without knowing who I was," she began softly. "But now you should know the truth. My father is a very wealthy man. His name is Karim. He owns shipping companies and factories. People call him a millionaire." Amir listened quietly, his spoon pausing mid-air. He had expected something like this, but hearing it directly made the distance between their worlds suddenly clearer. He lowered his spoon slowly. "So you are the daughter of a millionaire," he said in his calm voice. Lena nodded, her gaze dropping to the fire. "Yes. My family must be searching for me. They must be worried sick. The yacht, it wasn't just for me. We were traveling for business meetings. I got separated when the storm broke it apart." Amir said nothing for a while. He simply looked into the flames. Finally, he spoke. "Your family will find you. A person like you does not go missing for long." There was no bitterness in his voice, only quiet truth. Lena felt it twist in her heart. She realized how different their lives were. She had grown up in a mansion, surrounded by servants, never worrying about food or shelter. Amir lived each day wondering if the sea would be generous enough to let him eat. And yet, it was Amir, not her father's wealth, who had saved her life. Meanwhile, far from the small hut, her father Karim was indeed searching. He had sent search boats, helicopters, and men across the coastline, desperate to find his daughter. News of the storm and the sinking yacht had spread, and many feared the worst. But Karim refused to believe his daughter was gone. Every night, he sat by the phone, waiting for news, praying that someone, somewhere, had saved her. Back in the hut, Lena watched Amir carefully. She noticed how his clothes were worn thin, how his boat leaked water, how he often gave her the larger portion of food though he needed it more. One evening, she said quietly, "Amir, you always share everything with me. But you yourself, you go hungry sometimes. Why?" Amir looked at her with steady eyes. "Because I know what it means to be hungry. I cannot watch someone else suffer when I can help, even a little. My father used to tell me, a fisherman may have an empty basket, but he must never have an empty heart." His words touched Lena deeply. She had never known such pure kindness. In her world, people often gave only when they wanted something in return. But Amir gave without expecting anything. One afternoon, while walking by the shore, Lena found a broken piece of mirror washed up from the sea. She looked at her reflection, her hair messy, her face sun-kissed, her clothes worn from days of simple living. She barely looked like the daughter of a millionaire anymore. And strangely, she felt freer this way. But she also knew the truth, her family's search would reach her soon. She imagined her father's worried face and her home filled with voices calling her name. The thought made her both relieved and sad. That night, she told Amir, "When my family finds me, I don't know what will happen. They might take me far away from here, back to my world. But I want you to know something. Even if I leave, I will never forget what you did for me. You gave me life again." Amir looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Lena, the sea brought you to me, and the sea may take you back. But remember, the sea does not erase what it touches. It only carries it forward." His words were like poetry, simple yet deep. Lena felt her throat tighten. She wanted to say more, to tell him how much his kindness meant, but the words stuck in her heart. Far away, on the other side of the coast, one of Kareem's search teams had just found a fisherman who claimed he had seen a small boat struggling near the storm. The pieces were coming together. Soon, fate would bring Lena's two worlds, Amir's hut and her father's mansion, crashing into each other. And neither she nor Amir could guess how much their lives were about to change. The morning was quiet, the sea calm after many restless days. Amir had just returned from fishing with only a handful of small fish. He placed them in a clay bowl near the fire and sat down to repair his torn net once again. Life had not changed for him. Each day was still a struggle, but there was one difference now: Lena. She stood near the shore, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching the horizon. Her heart was heavy. Part of her wished her family would appear and take her home, but another part wished the sea would keep her here, in this simple world where kindness mattered more than gold. Suddenly, in the distance, the sound of engines broke the silence. Lena turned sharply. She saw a large boat approaching, far bigger than Amir's. Her breath caught. She knew immediately it was one of her father's search boats. "Amir," she called, her voice trembling. "They're here, they've found me." Amir looked up from his net. His eyes followed her gaze to the horizon. A heavy feeling settled in his chest. He had known this moment would come, but knowing did not make it easier. The boat grew closer, and soon several men in uniforms jumped onto the sand. "Miss Lena," one of them shouted. Relief flooded their faces as they rushed toward her. Lena's eyes filled with tears. She was overjoyed to see them, but she also felt a strange ache deep inside. She turned quickly toward Amir, as if afraid this moment would erase everything they had shared. The men surrounded her, wrapping her in warm jackets, asking if she was hurt. One of them spoke into a radio, announcing the good news: "We've found her. Miss Lena is alive." Minutes later, another sound filled the air: the heavy thump of helicopter blades. The villagers began gathering near the shore, staring in wonder as the great machine hovered and then landed carefully on the sand. From inside, a tall man in a fine coat rushed out. His face was lined with worry, his eyes searching desperately. "Lena," he cried, running toward her. "Father!" Lena's voice broke as she threw herself into his arms. Tears streamed down her cheeks as Kareem held her tightly, his body shaking with relief. "I thought I lost you," he whispered, his voice thick. "I'm safe, Father," Lena said softly, though her eyes glanced quickly toward Amir. Kareem followed her gaze. His eyes landed on the poor fisherman standing a little distance away. Amir's clothes were worn, his boat cracked, his hut small and fragile. Yet his stance was steady, his face calm. "Who is he?" Kareem asked his daughter. Lena stepped back, holding her father's hand. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Father, this is Amir. He saved me. If not for him, the sea would have taken me. I owe him my life." Karim looked at Amir with new eyes. He stepped forward and extended his hand. "Young man, I cannot thank you enough. You risked your life for my daughter. You are braver than many men I know." Amir hesitated, then shook his hand. His rough, calloused fingers met the smooth hand of a millionaire. "I only did what anyone should do," Amir said simply. Karim's eyes softened. "Not everyone would have done it. For that, I am forever grateful." The villagers murmured among themselves, amazed by the scene: a poor fisherman standing before a wealthy man, connected by fate. As the helicopter prepared to take Lena home, she turned to Amir once more. Her eyes shone with tears. "I don't want to leave without saying this. Amir, you gave me more than life. You showed me kindness when I had nothing, when I was helpless. I will never forget you." Amir's heart ached at her words, but he kept his voice steady. "The sea brought you here, Lena. It was never meant to keep you. Go back to your family. That is where you belong." Lena shook her head softly. "A part of me will always belong here, with you." Karim watched the exchange silently, realizing the depth of what had happened between them. For the first time, he saw his daughter not as a sheltered girl, but as a woman who had learned the true meaning of gratitude and love. The men guided Lena toward the helicopter. She looked back again and again, her eyes never leaving Amir's figure on the shore. He stood tall, the wind tugging at his shirt, the sea behind him as endless as his silence. The helicopter lifted into the sky, carrying Lena back to her world of wealth and safety. Amir watched until it became a small dot in the horizon. His hut felt emptier than ever, and his heart heavier. But deep inside, he also felt something new. For once in his life, he was not just a poor fisherman. He was the man who had saved a life, the man Lena would never forget. And though their worlds had parted, Amir knew the sea had not finished their story yet. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to its old rhythm for Amir. He rose early, rode into the sea, cast his nets, and prayed for fish. His hut stood the same, his boat remained weak, and his stomach was often empty. Yet, something inside him had changed. Each morning, as he pushed his boat into the waves, he remembered Lena's voice, her eyes filled with gratitude, her words promising she would never forget him. He didn't expect to see her again, but her memory gave him strength. Whenever the sea grew rough, he told himself, "I survived worse. I saved a life. I can face this too." The villagers still whispered about what had happened. Some admired Amir's bravery, while others doubted his story. But Amir did not argue with them. He knew the truth, and so did Lena. That was enough. One bright morning, the sound of engines broke the peace once again. The villagers rushed to the shore, murmuring in surprise. A long black car, polished and shining, stopped near Amir's hut. From it stepped Karim, dressed in his fine suit, followed by Lena. Amir, who had just returned from fishing, froze in shock. The sight of them against the background of his poor hut looked unreal, like two worlds colliding once more. Lena's face lit up when she saw him. She rushed forward, her voice trembling with joy. "Amir." Amir set down his net slowly. "Lena," he said, his voice calm, though his heart beat faster. "I did not expect to see you here again." "I told you I would never forget you," Lena replied softly. "I meant every word." Karim stepped forward, his eyes kind but serious. Amir, my daughter owes her life to you. And I owe you more than words can ever repay. That is why I came here today. The villagers gathered around, curious, whispering among themselves. Amir stood still, his hands rough with work, his clothes worn, yet his posture strong. Karim continued, I know you are a fisherman who struggles every day. You saved my daughter not for reward, but because your heart is noble. Still, I cannot let your kindness go without honor. I wish to give you a new boat, stronger and larger, with new nets, so that you may live with dignity and ease. Gasps rose from the villagers. Amir's eyes widened. For a moment, he could not speak. A new boat was more than he had ever dreamed of. It meant food every day, security, and a chance to live without fear of hunger. But Amir's voice was humble when he finally spoke. I did not save Lena for reward. I only did what was right. Karim placed a hand on his shoulder. That is exactly why you deserve it. Please accept it not as payment, but as gratitude. Amir looked at Lena. She nodded gently, her eyes urging him to accept. Slowly, Amir gave a small smile. Then I will accept, with thanks. That afternoon, the villagers watched in awe as workers brought a shining new fishing boat to the shore. It was strong, with fresh paint, solid wood, and fine nets neatly folded inside. For Amir, it was like a dream turned real. He touched the boat's side with trembling hands, whispering, Father, your boat has a brother now. Lena stood beside him, smiling. Now you will not have to fight the sea with broken tools. Amir looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. This will change my life. Thank you. Lena shook her head softly. No, Amir. You changed mine first. The sun began to set, painting the sky with gold and red. The villagers slowly returned to their homes, but Amir, Lena, and Karim remained by the shore. For a moment, all three stood silently, the waves washing over the sand as if blessing the new chapter in their lives. Before leaving, Karim said, Amir, you are welcome in our home anytime. You may be a fisherman, but to us, you are family now. Amir bowed his head respectfully. I will remember your words. When it was time to go, Lena lingered, her eyes on Amir. I don't know where life will take us, she whispered. But wherever I am, you will always have a place in my heart. Amir's voice was steady, though his chest ached. And you in mine. The sea brought us together, Lena. That will never change. The car carried Lena and Karim away, but Amir stood watching until it disappeared down the road. He turned back to his new boat, his heart full. He was still a fisherman, but no longer just a poor, forgotten man. He was Amir, the man who saved a life, the man the sea had chosen for something greater. And as the waves rolled gently under the evening sky, Amir smiled for the first time in years. The sea had finally rewarded his patience, not only with a boat, but with a bond that would live forever in his heart.